Welcome to Wind Down Wednesday. Here are your hosts, Jeffrey Tobias Halter and Amanda Hammett.
So good afternoon. Today we are focused on women in tech and what men can do to facilitate equality and the advancement of women. My name is Amanda Hammett and it is Wind Down Wednesdays, but I'm going to take in some water today to rehydrate the soul here. Jeff, what are you drinking today?
You know, Amanda, it's a beautiful spring day here in Atlanta, so it's appropriate. Break out a little rosé, nice dry French. And relax, go out in the sunshine and get some rays. So more importantly, it's my honor to introduce a friend and colleague and somebody else who is talking about male allyship. I am so excited to introduce Eva Helen. Eva is an entrepreneur with 20 years of experience in the technical field. She is the founder of EQ Inspiration, offering a variety of programs for men and mixed group in tech, wishing to help advance women and people of color in the workplace. Eva, welcome to Wind Down Wednesday. What's your beverage of choice?
Well, I go with Amanda's choice right now, water, because I also have to rehydrate. And it's a little bit late in the day for coffee, but normally I would always answer a double espresso.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Well, do you do that late afternoon as well?
No, that's why I said it's a little bit late right now. But normally, yes. I mean, I have one in the morning and one in the afternoon, sometimes one mid-morning. It depends.
All right.
Wow, that'll keep you going.
Yes, it will.
All right. Well, awesome. Let's jump right in. You wrote a book called Women in Tech, a book for guys. And I just love this. This is my wheelhouse. On an earlier show, we talked about the fact that allyship is the most needed training. It helps everything else work. McKinsey recently said that only 14% of companies are doing allyship training. And it could be the most important thing that organizations need to do to help men help women advance their careers and be non-judgmental or rhetoric. But you offer practical guidance and suggestions. What prompted you to write the book?
Well, as you mentioned, I have worked for a long time in tech, almost 20 years. So I did have some firsthand experience, most of it very, very good. I believe that there's a lot of great guys out there who are super supportive of women. I think that there's an enormous amount of men out there who want to be more supportive, but they're not quite sure what to do. And as I was starting on this new journey that I've been on for a few years now, I was talking to a lot of women, and they said a lot of things that were perhaps difficult to talk about, but they also talked about good guys. And so I started doing interviews with men, first on stage and then later on for the book, to hear about tangible tips and things that these men were already doing to support women. Because my goal was to lift and bring forward all of those positive stories. There is so much negativity and so much heaviness on this topic, and there has to be a place for that as well. But I felt that I wanted to show that there's actually goodness there as well. And I wanted to make role models out of a lot of these men and say, look, if this guy can do it, so can you.
Wonderful. Okay. So could you give us a little bit of background for, women in tech? You interviewed all of these men in the tech industry. Can you tell us about those actual interviews and what did you find?
So if I could be back there doing those interviews again, I would. It was phenomenal. You're doing interviews right now, and it's so amazing when you can kind of dig into what people are thinking and what they're feeling and where these ideas come from. So we talked a lot about their backgrounds, how they grew up, what their mothers were doing maybe when they were children, if they played an active role inside the household or if they worked outside of the house, if they had been bullied as children or grown up as bullies. Mm-hmm. And so we looked a lot at their backgrounds, and then we fast forwarded to the aha moment. When did you realize that perhaps men and women are treated differently? Where did you notice the power imbalances? A lot of them talked about college. Some talked about their first jobs. And then from there, we talked about their willingness to support women and minorities. And a lot of them have very high willingness. They really want to, but at the same time, they're hesitant because they're afraid of being judged or saying the wrong thing or doing the wrong thing. And then finally, we talked about actions. What were you actually doing in this moment? How did you actually support this woman? And two kinds of support and help emerged, the indirect and the direct. If I'm supporting Amanda directly, I'm saying, so Amanda, how can I help you in this situation? How do you want to talk about this particular manager and so on? And if it's indirect support, I might go to Jeffrey and say, hey, Jeffrey, I noticed how people were talking to Amanda in this meeting. Maybe you and I should try to address that in the next meeting. Obviously, always with Amanda's permission, never without it. So there is indirect and direct support that goes on. The character prototypes that I have in the book emerged after I had looked at all the material over an extended period of time. So it was a lot of interviews and a lot of material. And I was looking for patterns. And I quickly realized that there were 7 character prototypes that emerged. And all of these different characters are at different levels, both when it comes to awareness. They have different motivators for possibly wanting to help. Their willingness to help is different, and the actions they're taking are different. So that is the foundation for the book.
When I read about this and the prototypes, I thought it was so interesting because I love in the book around how you say you really don't train men. You tell stories because a lot of men don't want to be trained in this. And what you said is you have 7 prototypes. And this allows you to say, hey, this is a story about so-and-so. So the 7 prototypes for our listeners are Mark, James, Samir, Mimo, Al, Cree, and Richard. So can you explain what each of those represent just real quickly?
I'll group them up for you to make it easier. The top 3 are called the advocates. The next 3 are called the allies. And the guy on the bottom, I call the chauvinist. The important thing about the chauvinist, from the beginning, I was hesitant even to include him because there is a lot of negativity around that. There's a lot of hesitation to support, and there might even be an aversion towards providing any kind of support. Very often, there is a reason for that. And then I decided to include him as a reference point. The way to motivate that person who sits at the very bottom is very different from the people higher up. He needs to understand the statistics. He needs to understand what diverse teams will actually do for him if he's building such a team. He needs to understand how he can attack this talent shortage that we're moving into. So I decided to include him. Then we have the allies and the advocates. The biggest difference between the allies and the advocates, even though all of them do a little something or a lot to support women and minorities, the biggest difference is that the allies are still quite focused on themselves. There is a little bit of a fear and a concern to do and say the wrong thing. There's a high willingness to support, but a hesitation because they don't know what to do. When you come all the way up to the advocates, they're either supporting one woman at a time or a whole team, or they may be like you, Jeffrey, who's very comfortable speaking to mixed audiences, to groups of men or groups of women about this topic that you're an expert at. So I would name you in the Mark category because of the work you're doing and everything that you're talking about and writing about. While somebody who is a sponsor and supporting women in the workplace, one after another, making them visible, making them shine, making sure they're heard in meetings, lifting them forward, providing introductions, and so on. He is also an advocate, but at the bottom 3 of those advocates. So it's a range, but just, for simplicity, a little bit more focused on themselves as allies and completely focused on other people as advocates.
Wonderful. Well, I think that that's a really enlightening thing to think about and I'm sure that as you read the book, you can actually say, oh, this is my Mark, or this is my Samir, as it may be. And, you can place these various people within your career, maybe that you've had before in the past or currently, into these roles. So that's a really interesting take on this. Well, Eva, thank you so much for joining us. It has been our pleasure to have you today. And thank you guys for watching and for listening. And if you want more information about Eva and her book, please visit her website at eqinspiration.com. Again, that's eqinspiration.com. All right. Thank you so much. And we will see you in the next episode.
I'm Jeffrey Tobias Halter. Thank you for joining us this week for Wind Down Wednesday.
Thank you for joining us for Wind Down Wednesday. If you like this episode, please subscribe to receive more episodes straight to your inbox.